Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I've Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And today is either August 15th or 16th. You just said 15th. I could have sworn it was the 16th.
It said on my computer the 15th. So
Wow.
Either my computer is wrong or you're wrong.
I will accept your computer. It's near there. But I wanted to. This is a very me-heavy episode. I wanted to do a kind of quick update on the Olympics because we are going to do an Olympic wrap-up episode. And in that one, we'll do a much more like the good, the bad, the ugly, the controversy. This is just like, I watched a lot of Olympics, all of you. I watched a lot. And so this is just going to be some of the things I liked that I saw.
She was stressed out, y'all.
I was stressed. I was stressed. And I'm not someone who normally watches sports because they stress me out. But I was thinking about this. I think one of the interesting things, one, not a sponsor, as I mentioned, I had a free Peacock subscription.
Yes.
Because of our trip to Universal. And so I was able to watch it live. And Paris is not, it's like 6 hours ahead of the US. So I was like, normally if it's in Tokyo, I'm not going to stay up and be watching it, all hours of the night. But this was kind of live when I'm out and about. And so I'd be researching one of our episodes and I'd have it on in the background. So I watched a lot more than I normally watch. You can see a recent episode, part 1 of our 2024 Olympic coverage. Again, we'll have a second part. And again, listeners, if you have any thoughts about that, we have some people who are big into.
Oh, yes.
Yes, some of these sports, some people who are big into the Olympics, let us know. But I did want to start with this. So yes, the 2024 Summer Olympics have wrapped up and there was a lot of controversy. We'll talk about that. I wanted to talk about something else though, because as I said, I was watching a lot of it and I just noticed that I was way more interested in the women's competitions and not just for obvious reasons. I was also way more impressed when I was watching them. I knew more of their names and it turns out I may have been onto something.
You have.
Yes. Not only did the U.S. send more women than men, 314 women to 278 men, the U.S. women brought home more than half of the country's medals. They won so many medals that by themselves, they would have come in third in the medal count behind the U.S. and China. 26 of America's 40 gold medals are due to women. There were so many firsts. There were the breaking of droughts of like never have won and they finally won. There were continued streaks. There were records broken. As I said, I was so into it. But here are some of the ones that really stood out to me. Okay. Soccer.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. This is what I was texting you about. Stressed. I was so stressed because if anybody watched, I'm sure plenty of you did, the soccer matches, the football matches, they were, when the US was playing, it was like you would get to the very end and no one had scored. And so then it goes in overtime and it just feels so stressful. And there were so many like close calls of people almost making it and then not making it. And I'm on the edge of my seat. My heart is pounding and I'm more involved than I thought I would be. But the U.S. women's team did win. And it was really, really cool to see. It was so impressive. The amount of ability with all of the athletes and all of the kind of tricks they were doing. And the goalie, oh my gosh. The amazing catches she made. That was so good. I also want to shout out the announcer for this because she went on an impassioned rant about the health of the athletes and how that should be the foremost thing everybody's thinking about. She was angry because she felt like the scheduling was not taking them into account, but also the fact that, and this is a problem with the Olympics in general, they were kind of trucking them out to a further away stadium that was prettier when they were closer stadiums that they could have played in and wouldn't have had this kind of travel time. But I really, really appreciated that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. And as I mentioned in our first Olympic episode that we did about the 2024 Summer Olympics, I was just sending random quotes to some of my friends about the Olympics. I think my favorite one was a random Snoop Dogg quote about women's soccer where he said, "This name is Dennis the Menace." And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I love it. I love it.
I mean, Snoop Dogg and Flava Flav being the representations for the U.S., I feel like we're pretty perfect.
It was very fun.
Snoop Dogg coming out to anoint the ground, the breaking, was actually on par with like, okay, at the very least, we have a U.S. rapper who was a part of the beginning of some of the big rap names. I'm like, okay, there's that at least, I guess.
Yeah. He has, so many excellent quotes. It was really fun to hear him be so into it. He was so into it.
Mm-hmm.
There was another quote about soccer. It wasn't Snoop Dogg, but it was a male announcer said, "Speared by the trident." Out of context, that's fantastic. But it's the three main offensive players. They work together, and they usually are the ones that get the goal. And I think it was one of each of them got for the 3 games.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was cool. But they were all just 1-goal games. They were tight, tense. Whew. I loved it. I wonder if y'all remember we brought on my good friend Whitney to talk about soccer a year ago, 2 years ago. The World Cup. And I wanted to reach out to her, but if I was stressed, I could only imagine how stressed she was. And I wanted to wait.
Would have appreciated that.
I wanted to wait until I knew the outcome. And
yeah, I did that thing where I'm like, oh, the women's, we missed it. They won. Like, that's exactly how it went for me. I was like, I did not realize they already played. Okay, what?
I mean, it was nice of like, sometimes, like I said, I was watching most of this live, but some things I would like, if I missed it live, you could cheat and look up spoilers almost because it had already happened.
Yes, the anxiety I have in watching these things, I'm like, the Suni Lee, I believe she had a mishap. I'm like, see, this is why I don't want to watch these things, because it makes, she had a great sense of humor about it, but I'm like, this freaks me out.
Yeah, the gymnastics are so intense. They stress me out too, because somebody could fall at any minute, and I believe what you're talking about is the balance beam.
Yes.
Well, I think 4 people fell off.
Oh, see,
and
that freaks me out.
Simone Biles later was asked about it and said it was basically a weird atmosphere because everybody was being urged to be quiet, and there was no music, and they even asked for music, and they were like, no, this is actually worse, because when we practice there's usually sound or something.
Wow. Ooh.
Yeah, so she said that everybody felt off their game because it was so silent and not like a practice.
Some of these things make me believe the conspiracies that have happened with the French hosting this, like Paris hosting this. French listeners don't be mad, but there were some things that I'm like, why are they doing that? That seems like a purposeful setup. Like, what is happening? Yeah. And I'm like, people were really upset about like the men's basketball. I know you're going to talk about that in a second, but like the men's basketball team winning and like really angry. And booing. They were booing the U.S. when they were getting their gold medals. I was like, damn. And I know one player, I think, was a French player who decided to play for the U.S. Like, he could play for either one. Is that I know several of these incidents have happened, but I believe, and he got real booed. Like, people were not happy. So I'm like, y'all are not nice. Like, you can't be acting like this if this is going to be hosted in your country. I get being, like, upset, but damn.
Yes, well, that does bring us to basketball, women's basketball. But my conspiracy theories, this was This was the second to last event that they broadcast. I think it might have been the last event they broadcast, but the marathon was the last medal awarded, the women's marathon, which they did purposefully because they've been all about gender parity and they wanted to switch. It's usually the male and men's marathon, men's sports, so they switched it. I, to my shame, have not watched a lot of women's basketball. I am very excited about super producer Christina let us know we're getting a women's sports bar.
Yeah, no.
I'm super into, because I was having, I was stressed, but I was having a great time.
Watching something that everybody's excited about, like that's when you're watching the World Cup, when you're watching like any of those things. I'm not even like a Braves fan, and when like they were in the World Series, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. The hype.
Yes. And I was thinking about this because there is a certain part where it's like, I don't know how I would feel if they had lost. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I had a great time. I like to think I would have thought that was a good game. I think as long as it wasn't an absolute crush, got humiliated. I like to think I might be hurt, but that was a good game. But they did win.
Yes, exactly.
They did win.
They won.
It was their 8th gold medal. They're Olympic dynasty. They had so many women from the past that they interviewed about it, and it was amazing. But it was against France, just like the men, and it was a tight game. There were plenty of times where I was thinking, this is over. This is over. And I had watched their previous games, and they were just doing things that were so amazing. I was in shock. I don't even know how you can coordinate that with other people without talking. It was, years of practice, obviously, but whoa. And they were doing amazing things in this one too, but it was just like a brutal physical game.
Yeah.
And the announcers were kind of subtly, not so subtly saying the whistle is going way more positively in France's direction than the US's direction. And I have to say, maybe I got swept up, but I was like, I think you're right. I think you're right.
There were several conversations with Coco Gauff. And even with again, the gymnastics situation, unfortunately with Jordan Childs, and then what happened and who was there's so many things that it doesn't make sense to me that I'm like, this is not very sportsmanlike, and I feel like it just killed the spirit. But not that because obviously the U.S. pulled through and we're wonderful, but there are moments that are like this. There needs to be a level of if it's going to be camaraderie, which is the whole point of world peace and friendly competition, then we should allow for fairness and all the way through. There seems to be a lot of pulling of tricks.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's not I'm sure that exists in every Olympics, but it was just funny to me because even I at the end was like, ooh, I don't think. I don't know about that one. I will say it was the loss. Oh my gosh, it was stunning. There was if France could score 3 points, it would tie it. It would go into overtime, and there was 2 seconds left or something. And I think it was Gabby Williams. Correct me if I'm wrong. But she was a really good player from France's side. She made the shot, but she made it from the 3-point line, but she stepped on the line. So it was 2 points.
Oh,
so they didn't
ouch.
make it. But my heart goes out to that is brutal.
That is brutal.
And it was down to the wire. Oh my gosh. But it was also cool to see, because again, I watched all their games. It was cool to see that some games, some people would be specializing in something, and then it was clear their strategy wasn't working against another country, so they would switch out.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the spotlight went. There were definitely some standout names, but it was very much who's the best in this situation.
Right.
And I really liked that. Which also, I'm not going to really talk about it in here, but I was thinking about that when I was watching track and I was listening to the differences between women baton, women's relay and men's relay. And because they're usually competitors, right, on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But they were saying like the women's relay has just had such a history of being very successful and the men's relay doesn't. And I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm not saying that at all. But I just couldn't help being like, huh, that's interesting.
Like, yeah, the men's, when I saw that, like the fumble, there was a fumble with the baton and it was like, what? And then the women's were so damn smooth, like to the point that the woman just, it looked like that she hadn't even grabbed it. You didn't even notice until she's like, oh, it's in her hand. But it was so smooth, and they had like ran half the track together. That's the other part. I was like, what's happening? She has to race her own people to get to her.
Yeah. Yes. I will say, in fairness, I believe Noah Lyle was supposed to be on the men's team, relay team, but he had COVID. But this has been the case for a long time. They were talking about like, can the U.S. men's relay team finally break this?
Yeah,
because they haven't won. Just something to think about.
Yeah.
I also, there was a lot of discussion around mental health and gender parity from the announcers, from past athletes. That was a huge theme throughout social media, the harms it could have sometimes. That was a big conversation. As I said, the ending of events on women's events, and the women who won the medals in the marathon were given their medals during the closing ceremony. And there's just like legends like Simone Biles and Katie Ledecky, Tori Husk, like so many. That was really, really cool. And I really liked seeing, because they had some people who were, younger and had seen these athletes perform and were now able to compete alongside them. And it was really cool to hear about that, and how inspired they were by that, but we're still competing against them and competitive against them. I really liked that. And the support of that as well. That was cool. I did love the memes. I must admit, this was a meme-heavy Olympics. So many. And then, final note, the closing ceremony. There was a character called the Golden Voyager that I have to say, from a distance, looks like Disco Luke, to the point I almost posted on social media for the first time, and who knows how long, a side-by-side.
She sent me a picture, y'all. I immediately got a picture.
I was in shock. Like, when she saw him close up, I was like, okay. But from that, like, distance.
From her hopes.
I was like, Disco Luke? You're here?
What are you doing here?
For anybody who somehow has missed that, Disco Luke is like my Dragon Con. It's my cosplay I do a lot. It's a very bizarre 70s Luke Skywalker. It looks a lot like this fella, the Golden Voyager, at the Olympic closing ceremony. That was a nice way for me to end it. I do have to admit, there was something very comical about Snoop Dogg singing Drop It Like It's Hot with a woman in like a US bikini behind him, dropping it like it's hot for the send-off to the LA 2028.
You're right. Which was hilarious, by the way, because everybody was so angry, except for the Tom Cruise drop-in. They're like, the rest of it was over teleprompter, and everybody thought they would be in France. So people had bought tickets to be in France for the closing ceremony, and everybody, including Snoop Dogg, who had previously been in France, are all back in LA. And everybody's like, what the hell?
Yeah. I guess you can't do stunts like jumping from a jet onto a motorcycle.
Through Zoom. But no, yeah. I'm guessing this was like an introduction to Welcome to LA, since that's the next games. But it's still kind of funny that people were like, wait, we were expecting this to be a live show. What's happening?
Yeah, that's fair. That is completely fair. Well, so those are just some of my highlights. There were so many. There were so many things. There were so many I wasn't expecting of sports I don't even know that much about, which is really cool, which is why we would love to hear from you listeners if you have any thoughts or people we should shout out, because we're planning a wrap up that's going to be less of my, oh, this is stuff I really liked, more of the what went down,
the happenings of.
yes. So that's coming soon. So please send those in if you have them as soon as possible. Also, the Paralympics are coming up.
Yeah.
Don't forget. And we will be talking about that as well. Okay, so yes, you can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Will Never Told You. We're on YouTube, but we have a TeePublic store and we have a book where we do talk about the Olympics. You can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.